make you go. Okay. Well, Centurion, I'm going to get it, I'm going to have it republished, independently published, because there's no market for, there's no market with publishers for previously published works, unless you're Stephen King and it's like a bestseller forever and ever. So I decided to go ahead and republish the works that were published. That was my writer friend suggested I do that. I thought it was a good idea. And I called up Amazon and they're like, well, it's on the, it's already up. Everything's already done. You know, all they have to do is, they're going to do new cover for me. They're going to edit something, you know, get out the old information from the previous publisher and update everything. So I don't know, should be good. Come out, at least be available, and I'll be able to do something with it. I may do that with the other writing that I have too, but we'll see what happens. Anyway, I just thought that was interesting because then I'll at least have, when I talk about Centurion, instead of being $1,400 a copy or so from eBay.
You're going to lower that cost, are you?
Well, I don't know, it'll be a reasonable cost, and you'll be able to get Kindles and all those other things. So, which you could before, but
Yeah, steeper.
yeah. Anyway, I think it's a fun book, but you know, it has a lot of the basic stuff that I grabbed from Greek and Roman sources that you just don't find other places, you know. Anyway,
We run out of bookcases. We don't have stacks.
we have Jesus. It's interesting that, you know, today they were talking about my sheep. Jesus is a good shepherd. We already did that and found out a lot of really interesting stuff that I think is pretty cool culturally. But now we've had Jesus at Lazarus and the resurrection of Lazarus, and then the anointing of Christ, which was a critical aspect of him being then the sacrifice and him being going to the cross, which is the next stage. But this is occurring during Passover. So at Passover, the next day, a great crowd had come for the festival, heard that Jesus was on his way to Jerusalem. And of course, he has to be there for the Passover. Here's the Greek. On the next day, much people that were come to the feast when they heard that Jesus was coming to Jerusalem. And here we go in the Greek. To the occurring on the succeeding day, the throng, many, they came and went to the festival, they having heard that because Jesus was coming or going to Jerusalem. And the translation, to the occurring on the succeeding day, many in the throng, they went off to the festival, they having heard that Jesus is coming into Jerusalem. So you remember they were anticipating, I told you, Jesus had gone to Ephraim. He'd gone up to the area where he wasn't expecting to find the Romans or he's not as worried about the Romans at this point. The Romans really, you know, as you saw in Centurion, the Romans were really not concerned as much with the governance of Israel or that area as much as they were getting the tribute. And this was true all over the place. And, you know, the tribute is the thing. The Romans were not as ubiquitous to a degree as is shown, I think, in The Chosen or in a lot of people's minds, right? Their idea is that you saw these Romans everywhere and that they were, you know, in every reach of Jerusalem. Some of the aspects they show in the show and The Chosen are probably kind of accurate in the fact that they were separated. I'll show you some things and maybe we can look at a little bit. But in general, the Romans had issues, real issues. First of all, they generally didn't have as many communication issues because they spoke Greek, right? And Greek is the language of the place. However, um, they didn't speak Aramaic, and not that the people spoke. I don't think the people spoke much Aramaic, especially in Jerusalem. A Chaldean is really Aramaic, but they all spoke Greek. The problem is that, think about this very carefully. Every person that speaks Aramaic, what do you think they all have when they speak Greek?
An accent.
Yeah, an accent. And what do you think every Roman has when they speak Greek?
Different.
A different accent. Exactly. And so people easily divided culturally by the fact that they had an accent or not. To the point that the Greeks, what do they think? Even if they're speaking Greek, they would say, oh, that's good, pat you on the head.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they're thinking, you're a barbarian, right? You're a barbarian. It's not your first tongue. You're not really speaking it in the correct way. And remember this. Okay, how many city-states did the Romans have? I mean, the Greeks have. Well, we know Athens, Sparta, Thebes, Macedonia, Crete, all the islands are their own little kingdom-ish places, right? How many different dialects did the Greeks speak?
Many.
Well, yeah, every area. As a matter of fact, that's why, Koine Greek, Koine Greek is the universal Greek, but Koine Greek is really Athenian Greek. And that's why I think it's a little, there is Macedonian Greek and Theban Greek and Spartan Greek. All the different languages have dialects. And you say, well, how bad are dialects? More like Northern Germany to Southern Germany dialects. You say, how bad is that? It's really bad. Bernisch, Bavarian, German, compared to Neudeutsch, huge difference. We think you go from the north to the south, right? You go from Yuns in the north in Pennsylvania to Yalls in the south, and we think, oh, that's huge dialects. No, that's nothing. People can at least understand each other. It may be more like going from the northeast. Well, maybe not, because the words change, not just the accent, not just the way things are spoken, but and the big deal in American education is, in American education, we generally used to teach people how to speak good English. Well, American English. The Brits would say, it's not the Queen's English, now the King's English. We spoke the King's English. The King's English, right? We spoke King George's English. And that's what we're left with, the remnants of that. For some reason, the Brits went the wrong way, and they spell differently too, right? But my point is this. We think that all these cultures and societies are all similar. But you notice whenever Jesus and his Galileans come in, what do they almost immediately know?
Where you're from.
Yeah, they're Galileans. They obviously have some accent that distinctly separates them. Now, this may be dialectal accents as opposed to words and word usage. Yes, sir.
How long have the Jews been speaking Greek? I mean, does that go back hundreds of years, or, it couldn't be that far back.
332 BC. When Alexander the Great came in and took them. Now, there was a very negative transition period. But
they had revolts and,
But still, yeah, you're right. They had revolts, and they were not easily Hellenized, but yet that was the big fight, right? That's what caused the high priest to take his ball and leave to become an Essene. But yet the biggest problem is, it's like, we don't speak much French today, but if you lived prior to the 20th century, you would, well, the Brits didn't speak much French either, but they all knew French. That's supposed to be a joke, because they did. If you ever read some of the Victorian literature, they write about it. The kids are giving poems, plays, everything, French plays. And the people are nodding their heads. They all are supposed to understand French, and they might, but they aren't speaking French. They're speaking some kind of Englishized version of French that is apparently so bad that the French people are cringing. Just saying, you know, the Brits and the French never got along very well. The Germans and the French don't get along very well today, but those are a lot of political issues. But it's still, I think, really funny. It's called science.
Science.
But I think it's really interesting that, you know, that the English, that everyone would know French. Everyone would know French, to the point that I know it annoys you when you're reading one of the older novels and all of a sudden you come across a French phrase or French thing and you go, why didn't they translate it? They didn't need to at all. As a matter of fact, in British schools today, if you have a British either grammar school education or you have a private British school education, which is a large percentage of the smart kids. If you go to regular German or British school, it's like American school, so you won't learn anything. But if you go to a school in Britain that's private or grammar, 3 languages. And to get into the school, you have to write an essay in 3 languages. Only one of them is English. Usually the other 2 are, they like Latin. They like Latin. They don't do Greek routinely, but they do French, Italian, German, you know. But if you want to go into a grammar or a private education in Britain, you will come out knowing 3 languages, to the point where you could write a paper. And Merrick, to get into the schools, you have to write a paper in a foreign language.
Where do they learn it to get that entry point to, like in their grade school?
They prep
Primary school?
the kids who want to go, the parents who want their kids to go to private and, you know, private parochial. The British school system is very interesting compared to the U.S. school system, because they really have an independent system that pays for private and parochial. The problem is you have to test into the private and the grammar school. And the parents that want their kids to go to a private or grammar school usually have the kids either start in a preparatory kind of environment, and they'll usually pay extra, so the kid will learn, you know, at least enough to be able to pass. And the tests, most kids in America could not pass the tests required to get into like the first year of a private or grammar school. But they don't technically track kids in Britain. The parents track the kids, which is, and really, if you want to be someone in Britain, although I've known people that came here and actually got college educations, but not there. Because if you haven't gone through a private and grammar school, your chance of getting into a university is almost 0.
Right. Privilege, not right.
Yeah. And of course, they track them everywhere else. So in Germany, you're tracked. They have 3 tracks. They have the low school, I think they call it the Mittelschule, the Hochschule, and the Gymnasium. If you go to Gymnasium, you're going to college generally. That's preparatory, and you're tracked. So